All right, welcome back to season four of Get to the Joke. My guest today is Isabel Hagen. Isabel and I have worked together several times in the past. I'm super excited that she could join us here today, all the way from New York City. Isabel is a classically trained violist who studied at Juilliard, but she's also an extremely talented comedian as well, who has performed on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and the New Faces at JFL. She has also worked on Broadway with such plays like Les Miserables and Fiddler on the Roof, and also has toured with Bjork. She has a very awesome web series, which I'll link to the show notes, called Is a Violist. And currently, she is getting ready to do everything in front of and behind the camera for her new movie On a String that will start in September. Isabel, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me and for really getting everything in there in a very short amount of time.
No worries.
Very,
It's a very
very
stellar resume.
succinct.
I had to leave a lot of stuff out just to highlight the high stuff there. I always like to start out with our guests as far as like just I am one for routines and what does someone's day look like. And I know from you, I think you and I are very similar where we are early birds versus night owls. So you can go into as much detail as possible, or you can keep it pretty high level, whichever you prefer, but kind of run me through an average day in the life of Isabel Hagen.
Oh, well, this is going to sound like I'm trying to be interesting, but I'm not. But there really is no average day for Isabel Hagen. What I mean by that is just that, it's kind of a mess right now. I wake up and I just sort of, I'm haphazardly dealing with lots of emails that came in the night before and just trying to play catch up on a lot of things. I am an early bird. I wake up, I don't always get out of bed when I wake up, but I'm always up with the sun. Like just I'm a light sleeper. I really love the morning. If I have my way on a
Mhm.
good day, I will wake up. I like to make the bed. I feel like I stopped making my bed for a while and then I started again and it really made a difference, you
Okay.
know? It's just like you've accomplished something already today. And then when you get in bed, your bed's made. I really like to get up and like wash dishes or put them away from if they're in the drying rack. That kind of centers me. And then I have a clean kitchen to then make breakfast or tea or whatever.
Feel like you're a kindred
So
spirit because I like the same thing. I like
really,
order.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I start sometimes by cleaning and then I really like to get outside sooner than later. So even though my partner often makes coffee in the morning, I will just not have any and then go get like an iced coffee, which I know is wasteful. But I just like to have a reason to kind of step outside and get some fresh air. It makes me feel happy. And
Nice.
like I'm not like missing the day. I kind of have this fear like I'm missing the day sometimes. And then I sometimes I'll sit at that shop and I like to listen back to sets. That's sort of how I get into writing for the day is I just listen back and that always just gets me right in, gets the juices flowing. I'm immediately fixing things, adding a tag or getting an idea for a new joke. Um, and then I will usually like make a sandwich or a salad back at my apartment
Okay.
and sometimes exercise. I sometimes I go for a run. I'm trying to get it back into running. Am I being too detailed? Is this really
No, no, I like
banal?
it.
Or sometimes I'll just do like an intense 10 to 20 minute like ab workout in my office. Like I
Okay.
just go for it really hard for just like a few minutes just to feel like I did it, but that doesn't take too long. And recently I've been practicing viola again.
Oh, nice.
I I don't often practice every day anymore because
Hmm.
I don't usually have like new hard music to learn and muscle memory. I can kind of just do gigs now without I should practice, but I don't always. But I've been lately getting back into the routine of practicing like a half hour to an hour a day just because I realized it's something I'm so used to doing and really helps my focus and helps. It's very therapeutic
Hmm.
and it feels like I'm accomplishing something and it's tangible and so I like doing that. And then I like to sort of, bum around a lot too. Like if I have shows at night, which I normally do, I'll kind of be lazy. I'll let myself be like kind of a piece of shit for like a couple hours before and like watch Shark Tank or like garbage reality TV and have a snack before my shows. Um,
Okay.
so, but it's always a little different. And with traveling around, my routine's always getting uprooted. And then I'm always trying to figure out a better routine, which I think keeps me from sticking in one for too long.
Yeah.
I don't, do you struggle with this? Like,
Your life is inspirational, so it's not so much one that I live. I mean, the fact that you have gigs in which you travel around the country for is something I can't relate to as often or as much. But it's extremely interesting to me. It seems like with the day that you do have, you have a very disciplined approach in some format. For being an artist, it seems like you have pockets of discipline in a lifestyle that doesn't not necessarily call for that. Now, when you're on the road, if you're doing a club and you're in a town or an area that you've never been to before, do you try to keep that same routine, or do you try to be like, I'm in, you know, wherever, some outside of, Tulsa, Arizona or something like that, I'm gonna check it out, or you're like, nope, still going out for coffee in the morning, listening to my sets, coming back, or do you take advantage of new places?
I will still go get coffee and listen back to the set for sure. Those are like the two things I might maintain.
Mhm.
But I feel like sometimes I have these aspirations for when I'm on the road, like, oh, maybe I'll go for like a long walk or like I'll meditate or I'll see something or I'll go to a movie because I have this like free time in a weird town. And then I never actually do any of those things. And I end up being kind of like paralyzed in my hotel room. Like, okay, what am I like? My aspirations almost keep me from doing anything.
I get it.
And
Okay.
it uproots my routine at the same time.
All right.
But I think as I go on the road more, I'll probably just for
Mhm.
survival have to stick to a routine a little more. It because it does take a toll when you kind of let yourself just go with the wind when you're not in your normal place. And then it's like, oh, I'm really hungry and now I don't have time to find something good. So I'm just going to go get some crap down the
Yeah.
street.
Okay.
It's so
Nice. Well, I mean, so now tell me a little bit about like going out and doing sets when you're not on the road. So you are native, I mean, your whole life has been spent in New York City, so it gives you an advantage probably of knowing how to get around and get the most out of the cycle that is the mic scene there. I don't know how it works in New York with someone that of your status, if you're still doing open mics or you're doing more booked sets at this point, but um tell me like how like are you someone who's out every single night of the week trying to work on material in some way, or are there nights that you take off just like someone who's a professional, banker or doctor or something like that would have weekends as well?
I very rarely will intentionally take a night off.
Okay.
Sometimes if I want to have, I really want to have dinner with my partner and we got a reservation
Hmm.
somewhere, every now and then I'll be like, okay, I'll make sure I won't book any shows that night.
Okay.
But, I usually have like at least one night a week where I'm just not booked.
Hmm.
And in the past, I would have filled that with an open mic or
Hmm.
hustling around somehow. But because I'm also traveling so much nowadays, I take that night off. I
Okay.
take advantage of it to
Very
just
nice.
rest because I mean, I think everyone finds it tiring, but I'm just like, I'm a very tired person. Like I'm very low energy. I don't know if it's like vitamin D deficiency, but I just like I'm pretty low energy these days. Maybe
What?
it's because I'm in my
Wait,
30s.
do you think that you have low energy, or do you think people perceive you as having low energy?
Oh, well, I think people perceive me as having low energy, like especially sometimes on stage. Like I'm a little low energy in my
Mhm.
persona, although not always. But I also just, aside from that, not even how I come across to other people, I just know internally, like I'm just often exhausted
Okay.
and more
Okay.
exhausted than I should be for what I'm doing.
No, I mean you have a full day. I think it goes back to like you don't want to miss the day. So you pack in you pack in a full day. Hi. I'm assuming if you're still watching at this point that you're enjoying the episode. If you like this episode and you want to see more, please do me a small favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That is awesome. I love seeing subscribers go up. That means people are enjoying what I'm doing, which makes me feel good. So please Do that if you're really liking this. And if you want to, check out my website, markstod.com. Please feel free to contact me on the website. I respond to every email. Every email I respond to. Leave a comment. And the thing, too, I get back to most of those as well. And that's it for me. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to kind of how you got to here. Your dad's a musician and your brother is also a musician who also went to Juilliard, much like yourself. Can you kind of paint a picture of what your childhood was like? I mean, your parents, from what I understand, have been supportive of your comedy career, but did you, since your dad was a musician, I'm not sure what your mother does, but and your brother kind of was, a few steps in front of you with your trajectory. Did you grow up in a household of just discipline and routine and that kind of stuff? And that has now been a part of your mindset now?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as much discipline because my
Hmm.
parents are pretty laid back people. And at the end of the day, if I really didn't want to do something, they would be like, all right, then don't do it. Like, you'll
Okay.
regret it. They might like that have guilted me a little. Like there were some times early on when I was really like to my dad, like, I want to quit the violin. I don't want to play anymore. And he was like, all right, well, you might regret it, but if you really want to quit, just let me know. And then I wouldn't, because
Oh, yeah, the
so
guilt.
it didn't, there was definitely discipline. I feel like my brother, he's older and he
Hmm.
was incredibly disciplined with
Hmm.
practicing the piano. And then my dad would always be practicing or going out for gigs. And my
What did he play?
mom, saxophone.
Okay.
So he was doing like club dates
Hmm.
and all that whole world for most of my childhood.
Okay.
And then my mom is an artist and was a web designer for many years. And she was always working. So I think it was more like everyone around me was like working and doing their thing. So I was
Okay.
like, well, I better do a thing too. I think I was just
I
sort of
get,
emulating the focused people in my household
okay.
more than anything. But my dad would, when I was younger, like sit with me and practice. Like
I see.
you say, okay, for a half hour, we're going to do everything what we did in your lesson and make sure we go over it. So he did push me for sure.
Okay.
But I had friends who grew up in way stricter situations where they were like being woken up at 5 a.m. to get in a couple hours before school. And like, certainly didn't do any of that.
Okay. So you would say most of the so you would say like your parents didn't force you to play an instrument. You just did you was it your choice? No, wait, you said violin. Did you start out playing violin, switch to viola then?
Yeah, so I started
Okay.
on piano when I was, I don't know, 3 or 4, because
Okay.
my brother was taking piano lessons and I was
Yeah.
really not into it. I never practiced. I was never forced to practice. And then I just decided I wanted to play violin one day. So my
Hmm.
dad got me lessons for violin. And that's when he started pushing me because I think he saw I was a little more into it. And then
Hmm.
when I was 10, I switched to viola.
Okay.
And that's when I got really like, that was really my decision. I actually kind of had to push for that because my dad was like, well, you should stick with the violin for a few more years, get more of a, it's weird because the violin is like a more standard instrument size wise. Like it's
Hmm.
better to almost get a foundation on the violin for longer, just technically. But I was like, I'm dead set on like playing the viola now.
Okay.
So then I was like really self motivated at that point.
What age would you say that you noticed yourself, or maybe your parents or whoever you want to say your close circle noticed that your talents were superior than the people that you played with? Was there a certain time that you're like, okay, I've kind of did everything I could in this program?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very good voice. Like,
Hmm.
and as a child, like I would sing just and impress people. So I
Hmm.
noticed early on that I would impress people with certain things I did. And I always had a good ear. So I think even when I wasn't very advanced on the instrument, I was always like playing in tune. So that kind
Hmm.
of separated me from a lot of the kids who weren't playing in
Yeah.
tune.
Okay.
And I was in this one program for violin and then viola until I was 12.
Okay.
And at that point, my brother had gotten into the Juilliard pre-college program.
Hmm.
And I saw him doing that. And I said, well, I want to do that. So I auditioned for the Juilliard pre-college program and got into that. So that was probably like the shift when I was, no longer going to be a big fish in a small pond. And like I
Yeah.
got to this pre-college program and like people were so good, like kids who were younger than me, like these kids who were made to practice like 5 hours a day. And I was like,
Okay.
I practice like 2 hours a day, and I remember coming home and crying after my first Saturday at the Juilliard pre-college program, just like, I can't do this. And like in a panic. And I think I got some tough love. My mom was kind of like, what are you going to just be like anxious? Just like, just do it. She's very like, and it was really helpful in that moment. I was like, all right, I guess I'm not going to
Wait,
quit.
how much older is your brother than you are?
5 years. So it,
Okay.
it made a difference. Like he was very much my older brother growing
Did
up.
did growing up with your brother who's doing this, like, did you find yourself in competition a lot with him? Like, did you try to be like, I want to be better than him? Because he's getting a lot of praise. He's older.
I,
He's into like, were you like, no, 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 like, I'm gonna be better than him?
I never aspired to be better than him. I just wanted to be as good.
Okay.
So, and I remember I went to his graduation from Juilliard Pre-College and he got a couple special awards
Hmm.
at the graduation. And I remember saying, I'm going to get those awards too. And I
Okay.
did. Like it was not, and I never felt like I wanted to be better than he was. And also we played different instruments. So there wasn't
Yeah.
really like a way to really compare us anyway. But I
Hmm.
just wanted to like achieve the same stuff he achieved.
Okay.
So I would say it was a good thing in a way because it pushed me, he gave me like a goal
Why do you
to,
think that it was important to you to be as good? Were your parents favorable towards your brother because of his success with the piano? Why that means so
not
much to you?
really. It's funny, I've like never really talked about this before, just like this idea of like keeping up with him or where that came from. I think they definitely did a good job of giving us both like I'd say equal love and praise. I think it was like other people in our orbit
I
and
see.
we went to the same school, like regular school too, and he
Hmm.
was seen as like this very gifted, talented musician. And I think I just wanted that attention from other people that he was getting. But
Okay.
with our parents, it was like they were pretty good at honoring both of us for whatever we were doing at the time.
So you would go see your brother somewhere perform, and there'd be like they'd roll out the red carpet, and people would fawn over him, and you're like, one day, tell me then,
Yeah.
like, did you see yourself practicing more and more the better you got? Like, because like it seems like you are a competitive person. Is kind of where I'm like kind of drawing conclusions from here. So it seems like as you got more talented and you got access into more exclusive programs, did you find yourself like focusing more and more into the viola and those kind of things that were giving like to be the best, and therefore you were spending more and more time, or was it the opposite because you just said like I barely practice?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I did practice and there was
Hmm.
definitely a period, especially in high school when I was prepping to want to go to conservatory where I
Hmm.
knew I had to really step it up. So I was doing like maybe 3 hours a day, which is still a lot less
Hmm.
than a lot of my colleagues, but
Oh,
it
plus
was
school.
three really good hours and
Yeah.
it still worked. So
Yeah.
like on the one hand, I was practicing less than a lot of people, but on the other hand, I was still working really hard. And I say I don't practice now. This is like years later. Like,
Yeah.
for many years I was practicing a lot
Okay.
and very consistently. It would be weird for me to miss a day of practice. And yeah, as I got better, it definitely like I got excited as I was
Hmm.
getting validation. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I could really do this. I could be like a world-class musician. So I
Okay.
better really lean into this. Like once I saw it as a real possibility, I think I worked even harder.
Okay. So did your brother ever pull you to the side then, like, and be like, was he a big cheerleader for you, or was he more like, Isabel, it's not that great? Like, was there any, he's like, just see where they're putting me. Like, did he give you some guidance, or was he kind of like doing his own thing in his own track, and he was like, best of luck, I'll see you somewhere kind of thing, or did he kind of give you ins and outs kind of?
He wouldn't give me like career guidance. I think we
Hmm.
were both kind of flying blind with that. But he was tough though. He would come to my recitals and he would give me like honest feedback
Okay.
on my playing and he'd tell me like you need to practice slower. Like he would give me like practice tips, which made me
Hmm.
so mad in the moment, but he was right.
Yeah.
Because I would be like sort of hacking through something, wanting to rush, and he was like, you have to like practice it slowly with a metronome. every
Hmm.
day. Like, and I'd be like, okay, whatever. So yeah, he gave me like technical or like actual like practical advice on the instrument, but not like any like you
Okay.
shouldn't do this. And in fact, it was definitely like the two of us were both like idolizing music and just like, of course we're going to do this. There was no like realistic view of the career,
Hmm.
really.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
but you knew there was a career because your dad was making a career out of it. So you always hear like stand-ups. I'm sure you've heard before, like the girl like, oh, I had no idea you could do this for a living. They'll see like, Jay Leno or something like that on late night. Like, I had no idea this was a profession. But for
Right.
you, like you knew for sure like that, your dad was feeding you guys and all that kind of stuff by playing music. So that's pretty cool. Now
Yeah.
translate this over to joke writing. Now I know like practicing the viola is way different than practicing for comedy because I mean, like the more you practice the viola, the better your technique will get. You can't do the same thing to the mirror, and tell Joe that
Right.
makes no sense. Do you um do you have a focused joke writing method or model, or are you more lax and just be like, I'm working this out on stage? Or do you spend hours writing and perfecting? I mean, you already said you listen to your sets, but do you take a similar approach in the way you train for music as you train for comedy?
I would say yes, but just in the act of getting up every day. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
get being on stage is like our practicing, or it's like 75% of it,
Hmm.
or 50, however, everyone's different in terms of writing on stage or write. If you write off stage, then I'd say it's like 50% of it. The other
Hmm.
50% is writing.
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, especially when I started out, I was going to like multiple open mics a day, and that was kind of like my discipline. And I was like
Hmm.
listening back to every set because I was so horrible. And not, like, occasionally I'd get a laugh, and I was like, oh, what's that? Okay. And I would like, right. And so now, I'll listen back. Of course, I bomb all the time, but generally, like, I'll get more than one laugh a set,
Hmm.
It's like, so I'm not listening back to be like, what was the thing that got a laugh? It's sort of like, okay, what, more generally, like what's working, what's not, how can I tag this and make this stronger, more reliable.
Hmm.
Um, but I have worked out a few bits on stage and it's really fun and occasionally it's worked, but I'm definitely an off stage writer.
Okay.
And it's weird because I can't just like, rarely can I sit down and just write something and then say it and it's funny. It's like I have to write the idea, say it on stage, have it bomb, and then just rewrite it in my voice
Hmm.
almost. But I have to like hear it first.
Okay.
So it's like I'm like writing off stage, but then like also, I mean, I think that's what a lot of stand-ups do. Write
Yeah.
off stage, but then you kind of tweak it on stage. And then the listening back is where but I don't write for hours either. I don't know. It feels like a
Yeah.
very like sort of living, breathing the thing. Like listen back, maybe a half hour writing some stuff about it or taking
Well,
notes or
let's do this. Let's say you get a funny, I don't know. What would you say is the majority of the input into your joke? Would you say it's a funny thing that you thought of or an interesting thing that you thought of or observed? Which is probably, which would you say you lean towards more at the
I'd,
genesis of a joke?
I'd say maybe funny, like, and also embarrassing. Like a lot of things, it's like if I have a thought that I know other people have had that's kind of embarrassing or
Hmm.
like a paranoia or some sort of anxiety. And I know that that's how I'm like shaping how I'm acting because of some anxiety I have. That's usually
Hmm.
like a good kernel for a joke.
Okay.
Um, and it's changed kind of recently. Like I mean, it takes so long to get good at this, and I'm almost 8 years in, which is still
Hmm.
pretty new,
Hmm.
like in stand-up years in a
Hmm.
way. And it's new in the sense that like I feel like I just started having the experience where something funny will happen to me, and that
Hmm.
night I can talk about it on stage, and it kind of works.
Okay.
I used to never be able to do that. I would like, have to really organize it in my head and write it and have it fail a few times.
Hmm.
But now I'm getting to that place where maybe it's because I'm just more sure of what my voice is on stage that I can just like more quickly take it through that process to get a laugh on stage.
I see. So you if I can maybe clarify this in my own head, you've experienced something either embarrassing or something funny, and your mind has now shaped in the fact that like I can predict how my delivery will make this funnier because it might be one of those things like if you say it like, oh, you had to be there, but now you're getting as you get more tenured in comedy, you're able to see it from the audience angle kind of deal. That's pretty because I wanted to ask you about that too, because when you play music, like that note that you play or the notes that you play, as long as you hit that note exactly the same time at exactly the same, I don't know, I'm sorry, terrible with like we're same sound. I don't know, it's probably different every time. Like it will work, but you can tell the same joke in the same delivery, the same kind of timing for an audience in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, or an audience in San Diego, California, and you might get a different response. Does that drive you nuts because your whole life has been conditioned upon the fact that hitting this one thing will always deliver 100% satisfaction to the audience, and that doesn't happen in comedy?
It's definitely annoying. I think
Okay.
any comedian would feel that way, that
Hmm.
it's annoying, the uncertainty. But I think maybe especially because of what I used to go through in terms of, okay, well, the uncertainty used to be, am I going to hit that note?
Hmm.
I might not because it's it's a physical movement and I just might miss because like athletes miss.
Hmm.
It's like you're an athlete in your hands.
Hmm.
Um, so I think I appreciate the added uncertainty of comedy with that. It's not only my performance, but it's also the audience. And so they're just because there are more variables, I can kind of like chill out a little bit more, at least in terms of my negative self-talk about it. Because if something fails, like it's going to be for so many other reasons besides just me.
Okay.
And maybe it
Yeah.
was me. Like there's definitely times where I'm like, oh, I just like didn't have the right energy or I like totally misread the audience in what I did. And but I just like that there's just more variables. And so I can like talk
Okay.
myself out of the dark thoughts more easily. Cause I'm like, well, the audience just sucked or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just I'm fine. Next set.
Okay.
Like
Okay. So when you get these kind of moments that you think would be good for the stage, do you write them down or is it like I'm going to test out the idea on stage, put it through the smell test, and maybe then after I've said it out loud, it will get the writing procedure or it won't. Is that somewhat how you work out jokes? Okay.
yeah, like something happens, I'll write it in my phone, just like
Hmm.
the quickest thing I need to remember. And then I'll try it and then listen back and like write it out and be like, what did
Okay.
I say? How does this work? What
Now
are the beats? Yeah.
do you write it out word for word once it's like I know this is a good joke, or do you like, hey, I'm just gonna like write it bullet points, make sure I say this, or is it like a story?
I write the lines word for word
Nice.
because I just find that like it sometimes the joke working or not is like the difference of one word or
Hmm.
another and or an emphasis. So for me, it's just like I have it completely written out. Not
Yeah.
like every transition between jokes, but like every punchline is
Hmm.
like boom. And then the setup, it's funny because sometimes it's like, oh, the setup is just taking too long,
Yeah.
but I do need to get all of this information into the setup. So for me,
Hmm.
it's like that almost has to be just as like scripted because I have to make sure I get all the right information out there for that
Hmm.
so the punchline works, but so that it doesn't take too long too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then when it's so structured in your head, then you can like play around with it,
Yeah.
and it's almost easier to play with because you have a foundation to work from.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, and a question for you: did you write music too? Or did you always play? Okay. I was curious about like your editing process if you were to write music and how you would know and then relate it to comedy. But okay. Very
I
cool.
mean, I write songs now that I sing on
Hmm.
stage.
Yeah.
So I've technically written music, but I'm really not a composer. Really
Yeah.
never was interested in that aspect of it when I was just a musician.
Okay. Cool. Now you've been doing comedy for 8 years, as you mentioned, and it's like you have a pretty awesome resume for just, I mean, you say like you're still pretty new. I would vouch that 8 years is still pretty new. But you've been on television and just for laughs and you have a movie coming out, which is pretty sick. What I guess like how did you go in your career to getting kind of that jump into now people now that you're headlining and that kind of thing? Because you live in New York City with hundreds, if not thousands, of comics and people. I mean, even from Philly, like where I'm from, like people like kind of what's the right word? They kind of like max out here and then go to New York. So the pot in New York is much more talented than probably other cities around the country. Um, what would you say your, I guess, did you have a strategy to getting on television or these kind of things, or was it just luck that someone found you one time, or did you kind of go in your career and be like, hey, I want this spot on Jimmy Fallon and I know this person's going to be here at this time, can you get me a spot, I feel like I'm ready, or that kind of thing? Kind of, can you kind of give me that aspect of working on your career side of comedy?
Yeah. I had no strategy at first, obviously. I mean, I was just trying to learn how to do stand up. And for me, that was the thrill. So
Hmm.
it was just going to as many mics as I could and learning how to tell jokes. And then much quicker than I thought, and I got really lucky. A manager saw me at a show, and it was a show with five people in the audience. I almost didn't make it, and I was coming from playing a wedding gig
Hmm.
like uptown, and there was like horrible traffic because I took a cab, and I had my viola and like my dress
Hmm.
clothes that I had like quickly changed out of in the bathroom at the venue, and then like ran down to. So I was like tired and like sweaty and stressed, and then there were five people in the audience, and I was like, why did I even
Yeah.
make the effort? But I guess one of the people on the show was doing a longer set and her manager was watching. And
Okay.
I decided to just do my set. I didn't have the energy to like riff with five people. I just did my jokes.
Yeah.
They got as many laughs as five people could give. And then I got this weird message from this manager like on Facebook, and I looked him up, but he was legit. And then we started working together. And I think when he took me on, and he was like, I want to get you a JFL audition. And I was like,
Hmm.
really? So then I started seeing it. Again, it was like once it became realistic, like
Hmm.
when I, with music, when I saw that like I was getting more reactions,
Hmm.
once I got like that validation from this manager, and as my sets were getting better, I was like, well, I guess why not now? And
Yeah.
I didn't get JFL that year, but then I got it the next year. And then, once I was in that world, then I did start becoming more strategic and thinking like,
Hmm.
well, okay, if I want to get a TV set, I know who I need to have see me. So let me make sure I position myself so that that person can see me,
Hmm.
and like having my manager reach out, I would have never thought I would do a late night set like 5 years into comedy, but then
Hmm.
it was just happening. I knew I had a good 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't care if I've only been doing it 5 years. I could do 5 minutes on the Tonight Show. So why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
And so then I just started kind of putting it out, I say like putting it out into the universe. That
Yeah.
usually just means telling my manager I want something and then hoping he like can get the ball rolling.
Okay.
But it does sort of feel like a spiritual, like by telling him, I'm also
Yeah.
putting it out into the universe.
No, I know. It's no, it's I mean, you have to advocate for yourself. And let's not gloss over that you were on late night just not one time, but twice with two killer sets.
Oh,
Um
thanks.
and so do you think that when you got on television, now I know in when I was looking at other interviews and stuff that you've done, and your parents have always been supportive of going from music to comedy, and I'm going to come back to that for a second, but do you think that you felt in your heart of hearts that the TV kind of solidified that, okay, they are fully on board? Or was there a moment before that you're like, I don't need to feel guilty anymore about going into comedy? Or what's it the TV spot?
It's funny. I maybe when I got JFL, that was
Okay.
something because they knew it was something that was so hard to get and that I
Okay.
really
So they knew
wanted
what that
it.
was. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because they had come to my audition like the first time I did it, they came to the audition and sort of saw, the level that was happening
Hmm.
and this energy that clearly this is a coveted thing to get.
Hmm.
So I think once I got that, it did feel good to get to tell them. I think I was like really excited to tell them I got JFL. And
Hmm.
then the Tonight Show, obviously they were thrilled, but I feel like they were already really on board before that. And
Okay.
I think to them, it was like me working so hard at something was more the important thing. Like they were just like impressed that I was going out every night and doing these horrible shows in like back rooms of bar. They were just like, wow, she's really determined. Like I
Yeah.
think to their credit, they really valued like the determination and hard work more than like the accolades that I would receive.
Okay. I guess growing up kind of give me an idea of what success meant in your house. Like, was it money? Was it the size of the house? Was it fulfillment and significance in the career? Because your dad was a musician. So, I'm sure he's kind of been through the same kind of levels, layers of crap that you've gone through in your career to get to where you are as well. So he might have understanding, but like, or was success determined by getting to Juilliard and being renowned and famous and seeing your name in a playbill somewhere? Like, how would you describe success growing up in your parents with your parents, or how you want to describe that?
We never really talked about it. We would talk about specific things like, oh, maybe you'll play in the New York Phil one day. That would be
Hmm.
cool. And I'd be like, yeah, I want to play in the New York Phil and things like that. And, comedy came way later. So obviously we weren't discussing that. So it was all music based. Or,
Hmm.
maybe you'll get a teaching job at a wonderful but it was, I don't know, they never talked about like you need to have a house or this amount
Hmm.
of money. I think because they were both artists who kind of just figured it out as well. They just know that that's how it works.
Yeah.
If you're an artist, you just sort of figure it out and go along. And I don't know, I was never like, I was always in New York. So
Hmm.
that might have helped because I never was like leaving home in a way.
Yeah.
So they were just sort of always like, I lived at their house
Hmm.
into my 20s, which
Hmm.
afforded me a lot of like, comfort just because I wasn't like, that's like a real thing that helped me. I didn't have to pay rent like in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And
Especially in New York
but I
City.
was getting to live in New York. So I'm
Yeah.
really lucky in that way. Um, they never really laid anything out. It was always very like free form, just like what are we doing today? Like,
Hmm.
okay. But I think I could sense like their excitement at other high achieving artists. Like I saw it from afar. And so I definitely like internalized like, oh, I would like them to feel proud of me in that way.
Hmm.
But they never explicitly said anything to
Okay.
me.
I mean, so when your dad was a saxophonist, was he like a club saxophonist or was he like in an orchestra? Like what kind of gigs did he mostly play or like weddings and those kind of things?
He's had a really varied career. He did some really cool like tours with some big artists earlier on
Hmm.
and did a lot of recording sessions and just kind of had his hand in a lot of different things. And then when I was around, by the time I arrived, I think he was doing a lot of like corporate wedding club just because that's like a little more steady.
Hmm.
And when you have a kid,
Did
you
he
want a
take
little more
you to
steady
some of the
money.
gigs that he would play?
I hardly ever saw my dad
Okay.
perform. I mean, I've seen him now. I mean, he still performs occasionally, and I've seen him now. But I
Hmm.
remember um, my cousin's bat mitzvah. I was maybe 10,
Hmm.
and he sat in with the band at the bat mitzvah, and he sang. He didn't even have his
Oh,
horn. He just sang, and he would do that
yeah.
too. And I'd never seen him like get up there and like own a stage. And
Yeah.
I was so embarrassed. Like I hated it. I hated seeing my dad perform. He was good, but it was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And I wonder about like kids whose parents are actually like really famous performers and they're seeing them perform all the time. If that's
Hmm.
like a thing, like seeing your parents be vulnerable on stage in that way is almost like unsafe.
Yeah.
It's just like weird. And yeah, now I love seeing my dad like shine and he's so good and everything. But I was like, I couldn't stand it. I was like just waiting for him to get off stage.
Interesting. Interesting that I mean, like I mean, you're a 10-year-old girl, so that kind of makes sense. I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think like anytime your parents getting some kind of attention from peers of yours or something like that would probably be interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so when you decided to go into stand up and you've been very vocal about your parents have been supportive of going through this with you, but you were a Juilliard trained violist, and was it more? I know from the research I've done, comedy has kind of been something that's been in the periphery of your life, with your father and your brother. Um, would you say that you kind of took that leap into comedy as a result of falling out of love with music, or just being like, comedy's my calling and I gotta rip the band-aid off now versus keep going down this career, which I really don't want to go down, or another reason I'm not explicitly stating?
Yeah, I it was mostly like an intense love of comedy. Like
Hmm.
I once I discovered it and was watching it more like in college, and I was like, I want to do that.
Hmm.
And at the same time, it's almost like I realized that I was never fully in love with music.
Hmm.
It's kind of like when you're dating someone and then you meet someone else and you're like, whoa. And it's not that like you didn't love this other person. It's just like, oh,
Yeah.
I love this person way more or something.
Yeah.
So, and I still will always like, I love music and it's like my first love. And I
Hmm.
still love playing and I love listening. I mean, like, it's it's almost my favorite pastime. It's like listening to music and just
Hmm.
getting into stuff. But it was just I could see comedy as just something I could actually stand like doing the work for
Hmm.
more.
Yeah.
I feel like it's you have to just be okay with like the shittiest parts of a career.
Hmm.
It's like whatever career you can stand in its shittiest form the
Yeah.
most. And I can stand shitty comedy more than like shitty music.
Okay. Interesting. Would you say, would you say that might have pursued comedy harder or fell in love with comedy because it is something that your brother could never do? Do you feel like if you were the older sibling, your brother was younger, do you think comedy would still be a part of your life if you were the trailblazer?
I have no idea. Maybe it would have come in sooner because I wouldn't
Hmm.
have been, emulating someone else as
Okay.
much. Who knows? I definitely didn't ever think like, haha, he can't do this. Like,
Well, no,
I,
because I've heard you into interviews and you're very complimentary about it. He's very talented, he's a genius, Joel, but like you never said like he's also really funny. He never said that. So I'm assuming that he's not, maybe funny like in a Thanksgiving dinner kind of way, but like he's not. But so would you feel like this is a way I can separate myself out because our if you look at our resumes, they're very similar, but I'm going to do this. That will, I won't be living in my brother's shadow. What are your thoughts on me saying that?
maybe that's a subconscious thing. I never thought about it. It was always just my own like survival, like what's going to make me happiest? How can I
Hmm.
bear being alive the most?
Hmm.
Okay. Like, and my brother is funny, but definitely not like um well, I don't know. Maybe if he'd like worked at it, he could do it. He's definitely like got, I mean, he's a super goofball, like got a sense of humor for
Hmm.
sure, but um less calculatedly funny than I might be, and
Okay.
doesn't try to be funny.
Okay.
He just sort of is in
Okay.
his own goofy way.
Okay.
But yeah, I never I think he likes that I do it because he maybe felt a little like guilt
Friend.
that I was in his shadow, and so he
Okay.
really enjoys that I found my own thing,
Hmm.
but
Does,
it doesn't matter to
is
me.
he also New York based like yourself?
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
he
now
come
he's in
out?
Jersey, but he comes to a lot of shows. He's really supportive.
Does he
Yeah.
come out and give you notes at the end like he did at your when you were playing music?
No, I mean, no, he's always like, oh, that new thing, it was so funny. He's just very supportive. I mean, if I
Okay.
bomb, he'll be like, yeah, that sucked, but it's like I know it sucked because like with music, it's like mysterious. Like, was it good? Was it not? Everyone
Yeah.
just claps. With comedy, it's like everyone knows if it wasn't good. So
Hmm. Yeah.
whatever.
I figure that your joke writing is, I don't know why I should have brought this up earlier, but I feel like your joke writing what is very like written out because your jokes are real tight. Like when I've heard you in person and listened to you online, like there is no fat. You've been able to go through and really edit these jokes down to the essential parts, and in which I feel like you've accomplished getting all that information to the setup without being too wordy. Um, I've noticed your jokes are always about, like you mentioned, like embarrassing things, but like about yourself and um, things that have happened to you. Uh, do you write things that I would say, like, do you try to write jokes to figure yourself out? And I kind of go back to one of your good friends, Joe List, who kind of does this, who writes a lot. Like he's trying to figure out who he is kind of in the moment. But your jokes are more like things that have happened to you, like in the joke you do about being in the elevator with your poster being up, or the joke you did about dating your, the boyfriend from high school. Like things are just funny that have happened to you. But do you write things that kind of expose the inner part of kind of like how you're feeling about things? Um, Anything around those kind of, or there's just not at all?
Admittedly, I mean, I don't think my first goal is just finding something that's funny to talk
Okay.
about that feels authentic enough to me that I, won't feel like, because I've occasionally you land on a joke and it gets a laugh, but you're like, that doesn't feel like me,
Hmm.
So to me, it's like just funny and as authentic as I can be, but still maintaining like a high laugh rate, return rate.
Okay.
um, I don't know, if Joe List definitely is like a huge inspiration, and he definitely like really gets into his own like funny
Hmm.
mind and how it works, and it's like so him, but also so relatable.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what his intention behind all of that is, but it certainly is like the after effect of writing these jokes about like our paranoia and anxiety is like therapeutic.
Hmm.
Going in, I'm not like, I'm gonna figure myself out by like, I'm gonna really get in
Okay.
there. And it's really more just like what's getting a laugh. And it happens to, I think I write mostly about myself rather than like general observational humor, not because I don't like love that kind of comedy, but you're
Hmm.
much more likely to have an overlapping joke with someone if it's about
True.
other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think anytime I think I hit on something, I always just hear someone else do like a really similar joke at a show. And I'm like, and so the more personal you make it, just the harder it is to have any overlap because it's just me. This
What
is
about your takes on things though, like social issues, things like anything current eventy, like Roe versus Wade, or abortion, or gun control, anti-Semitism, anything like that, anything that would, like, I'm sure you have opinions on these, but do you try to make a deliberate effort to try to make them into a joke?
not really. I mean, I certainly I'm for abortion, and I used to do a joke about why but I think also I'm usually performing to people who have similar, either they have the similar political view to me, so I
Hmm.
don't feel like I need to like
Really? In
preach to the
Wilkes-Barre, you
choir.
think they have a similar viewpoint to you?
Or on the other side, they really don't have a similar
Yeah.
opinion to me, and I don't feel like going in and being like controversial. I just like don't feel
Yeah.
like it. Maybe
Okay.
I'll change. Maybe, and sometimes you get a joke that really toes the line and
Hmm.
beautifully pokes fun at both sides, and that's gold.
Hmm.
Um, and I definitely still want it to like err on the side that I believe in, but I do think it's good to like have a more holistic view of what's going on. If you can like joke about like the wider picture, that's like
Hmm.
really cool. And I think some comics do that really well. I think it's probably partly, I think it's just something that I haven't come to yet. As it's like another skill I probably just need to hone more,
Hmm.
being able to like get into these tougher topics in a way that is so funny that people won't think to get offended at first because they're just so funny. And that's the biggest issue with like these comics who are like, you can't say anything anymore. It's like half the time you hear the jokes that they're getting shit for, and it's like, well, it's
Hmm.
just not even that funny.
Hmm.
Like if you
Yeah.
had made it funnier, probably people wouldn't have even thought about the offensive aspect of it because but I the irony is I think when something's funny, really funny, it's because it's not really taking as much of a side and it's getting at more of like a larger truth about like humanity.
Yeah.
So it's like if it's funnier, it's just gonna also be by nature like less offensive. That's my thought on that.
That's
But
okay. I'm just no, I was just curious. I mean, I'm not giving you advice to do. I'm just
no,
curious to
no,
be
I'm not
like,
either. I'm just
um,
also like, I don't do like a lot of current event stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, your act is extremely like well written and well delivered, and like it's. I think what inspires me about you Isabel, is that when I interview comedians, I'm usually like, okay, this person kind of reminds me of this comic, and this person reminds me of this comic. But for you, it's like you are so different in a way, and not so much that you bring the viola into your act, but it's the way that your jokes are thought of. It's like you can do a one liner and then like effortlessly go into a story about something that's happened to you, and then you poke fun of that story of yourself kind of thing. Like you're expanding upon a joke not by just telling how funny it is in the moment, but then making fun of the fact that you were in this moment, like the British baby joke. So do you, when you're talking about like, hey, I'm just trying to pick something that is funny to me or something that, and then you try to like meld it now, and now that you're 8 years in, kind of meld to what the audience would find funny. Do you kind of put jokes through a filter as far as like, hey, I know this kind of style works for me, and so I try to do it like with this angle or take on this perspective? Or do you just kind of like write it out the first time, and then it could be whatever, because it's kind of how your act is right now, where you go between like one liners and stories and then observations kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's partly a product of being new because
Hmm.
I think earlier on I did a lot more shorter jokes, and it took me more time to develop the skill to do slightly more drawn out bits. But I still have a lot of my early jokes in there because I don't want to just put them to bed yet. I
Hmm.
haven't taped like an hour special. Maybe after the special gets taped, then I would finally put some of these things, like never say them again.
Okay.
Um, but to me, it feels like it's all still in play because I don't have like that album yet or that special.
Hmm.
And then because of that, yeah, it's like a little old Isabel, a little new, and I am just sort of, I'm almost like molting right now.
Okay.
Like and it's really in flux, and I also to that, uh, going back to like the current events thing, I think that's another reason why maybe I shy away from those topics because those are always like changing so rapidly, like news stories,
Hmm.
and because I know that I might be telling a lot of these jokes for a while, I like finding things that are more like evergreen, just because you can get more mileage out of them.
Yeah. Is that your next goal, to get an album recording or get an hour?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I have all the pieces together, and I've been working on this show that incorporates more playing into it, and I just sort
Yeah.
of I'm still like tweaking it, but it's definitely like ready in a
Okay.
sense, and I
Well,
definitely
let's be
want to.
honest, Isabel. If you wanted to record an album, you could do it. I mean, like you could do it
Yes.
with any record label. Are you specifically looking at a big kind of, like, you could put it on YouTube if you want to, or 800 Pound Gorilla would pick it up, or Comedy Dynamics, something like that? Or are you like, no, 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 I want like a top, like an A-level platform to go out to deliver this on?
Well, in the spirit of putting it into the universe, yeah, I want to.
Okay.
I guess my thought is I love that people are doing things independently, but I
Hmm.
also feel like so many people who are doing things independently had that success already with something that put them out into the world. So then
Hmm.
they already had the big following, and now they can kind of go independent and still have people follow them there.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, well, I don't want to start that way because who's going to find it? Like, I really would love to have something to like give me a little more wide reach
I see.
I mean, I think that everyone wants that, but
Does that something particularly have to be stand up, or are you hoping maybe this movie on a string could be that thing that would kind of draw more attention to you and your material?
it's possible. I mean, it's like, going to be like a little indie film that hopefully will have like a run at festivals and I mean, yeah,
It's
it's
gonna be sick
possible.
though.
And
Yeah.
I'll be the star of it. So if it gets
Yeah.
successful, then my face will be on it.
Hmm.
But it's just so hard to know. And in this day and age, I mean, things are just so much more divided up in terms of like, you know, a lot of people have no idea what movies are nominated for Oscars. And, it's just like not
Yeah.
because there's so many ways to consume media and so much media out there now
Hmm.
that I don't really like, even if the movie had the most success that it could have, I still don't think that would necessarily like make me that much more recognizable to the
Okay.
public.
You and I share a fondness for the same comic, who I would say isn't famous to the public, but he's like a comic, and that's Todd Barry. What
Mm-hmm.
would you want his career, or do you think that because like Todd Barry can go perform at the Cellar or perform wherever he wants to because comics know him and he delivers. But my parents don't know Todd Barry. You know what I mean? Like they're not
Right.
good. Like he's not recognizable from average middle America kind of thing. Um, would that career be of would that be like would that be attractive to you, or would that it's like that's not good enough? I still need to go back to that competitive nature of Isabel, little Isabel Hagen when she was in middle school, high school. Like I want to be the best at my craft.
As far as like stand-up careers go, I mean, he has it pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I could scoff at having his career as a stand-up. I don't think, and I might be wrong, I'm not sure if he like also writes and directs. And so, that's
Hmm.
just something I'm also like interested in.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of hard to compare because I think I maybe want to do some slightly different stuff than he does.
Yeah.
But I always looked at him and I've always like envied his sort of simple, seemingly simple life of, and I
Yeah.
think he kind of owns this. It's like,
Yeah.
he just sort of eats out every meal, like doesn't really like he's just like this free guy who like goes around and headlines and people love him and he's so funny in his own and especially funny in his own way.
Yeah. No,
There's really not
he's
a lot, no one like him.
there isn't one like
Um,
him. I can see this someone
yeah.
I can see why he's like someone that you like like I don't know, like his not his comedy, like I don't know. Your comedy, his comedy are very different, but like I don't know what the I guess like theme or aura, like I can see where like you get that like from now. Have you met Todd Barry? Do you like are you guys does he know who you are and fist
I
bump
met
or
him.
whatever?
I don't
Oh,
think he'd
okay.
remember me. We've like been on a
Okay.
show together and we'd be like, hey, maybe he'd
Okay.
recognize my face as like, oh, I think I've seen that girl before, but he
Okay.
doesn't know who Isabel
Okay.
Hagen is.
No, it's funny. I just was curious. I feel like all New York comics know each other in some way. I
Yeah.
mean, like because like you talk about like the platform, you are very active on social media with your bits, like on Instagram. I don't know if you do TikTok or whatever. Do you do TikTok? Okay. Um, uh, so you are trying to generate something out there, but you feel like still you wouldn't try to put out something onto YouTube, kind of like, I mean, being from Philly, we only have Shane Gillis as somebody who's kind of made it from our town kind of deal, even though many comics have went to New York. And some are successful and make livings of it. Shane Gillis is by far the most successful of the group, and he found that success, albeit controversy, kind of drew a lot of eyes his way, but like his special on YouTube has like what 13 million views or whatever on it. You don't like still that, and like you look at Sam Morril and Mark Norman have kind of came before Shane in that kind of era, and even before that Andrew Schultz. Like you don't think that it's something, I guess, like what's keeping you from doing it now and shipping out your work now versus waiting for that carrot maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road?
Boy, I don't know what is keeping me no. No, okay, there's a few things. One, Mark and Sam and Shane, even
Hmm.
like with the, like you said, the controversy was he had a lot of eyes on him.
Hmm.
They all had like other sort of, they were all pretty well known in the comedy world before I think they did any of their like DIY
Hmm.
stuff. I could be wrong, but pretty sure they all kind of had like a pretty solid base platform. That being said, I think I just haven't decided yet. And I
Okay.
think I also, especially because I'm making this movie right now, I'm like, well, I'm definitely not doing it before the movie.
Hmm.
So maybe after the movie, I'll reevaluate. And I think it's just sort of, I like to really have all the data and not do anything too impulsively. And if I
Okay.
come to a place where I'm like, you know what, it's more valuable to put something out now
Hmm.
and maybe have a fewer eyes on it than to wait 4 or 5 years for
Hmm.
something that more people, it would serve me more. And you know what, then the next hour maybe we'll get a bigger distribution. Like I
Yeah.
just haven't figured it out yet. And I don't know, it's just a tough thing to decide to do.
Okay. Okay. I'm not being critical. I was just curious or whatever because
No,
like
I
I look
don't
at
think
you and
it.
I'm like, man, she's got it. I was just the
Well,
um
I really appreciate your faith in me.
no. Hey, if you were, I would invest if you were investable, I would invest in you because I think you have very long-term long-term growth in your craft.
Oh, thanks.
I wanted to ask about I would say let me ask you this question first. of all your income that you make in a year, if it was like a pie chart, which side of the pie chart's bigger? Income made through music gigs or income made through comedy gigs?
I think I think like maybe 50-50,
Okay.
maybe a little more comedy now just because I'm doing more comedy.
Okay. Does success look like to you then never having to perform music for money again and just doing it for fun? And it's just a means to a feasible end at this moment?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And then, so my question is, or now I want to talk about bringing the viola into your act, which you talked about. I think there's the story of like, hey, I always brought it to my gigs, and I was like, man, I'll just bring it on stage. And I was like, I believe that until talking to you right now, where it seems like everything you do is a little calculated. Like there's a little bit of a strategy. There's a little, you talk about data, like there's a little bit of everything you do has a purpose to doing it. Break, doing the viola, there's no other comics. I mean, there's music comics, but none of them use like string instruments outside of a guitar, maybe. Um, what did you deliberately think that if I can start incorporating the viola in my act, I will stick out more than other people who are maybe as talented as I am and kind of give me that recognition? Or just the viola just saying like, hey, this just seems like something like fun to do, and now I'm getting some success and making it funny.
Yeah, what actually happened was I did JFL, and that was like
Hmm.
way before I brought the viola into it. Or I had once before I did like this test run viola comedy show
Hmm.
uh once before. So I knew it was kind of something I could do. Um and then I had my very first headlining gig at a club, and I did an hour and it went fine.
Hmm.
Like people were laughing the whole time, but it just felt like it was a little tired. And that was partly because I just was like new at headlining.
Hmm.
But even right then, I was like, man, like I've got like another side to me that could really like make this more special. And why not give that to people? Like I have
Hmm.
another mode of expression that could like just sort of enhance this. It just felt like I felt like I was like depriving the people of like a
Hmm.
more layered thing.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, okay, I want to like do the viola thing more consistently and just have it be at least a small part. I like to protect the stand up and
Hmm.
always be able to just do jokes. And that's why usually I just bring it out at the end, or if I do it throughout it, I still have like a lot of sections that are just telling jokes because I
Hmm.
really love that. And that I have to protect that for myself. Um, and then in terms of like going back, when I like first figured out how to bring it in, that was just because I just don't think I had a plan, but I just knew that I knew there would be a lot of value
Hmm.
if I could bring the viola in somehow, but I knew I had to do it in a way that I really loved. I wasn't going to just like bring it on and be like, and
Yeah.
then I was sad and like, man, like use like sound effects and things. I
Yeah.
could not do that. So then when I had the idea of just putting them next to each other, I was like, well, bingo, because I'm not compromising the quality of either one of them.
Yeah.
And in fact, the two enhance each other.
Yeah. How
So
did you
that's, yeah.
has the viola the when I see you do it now and when you did it on Fallon, is that kind of how it always started out? Or was it like, I mean, because it's funny how you do it because like you almost vouch for yourself because it's like you get this very like intricate, very beautiful music, and then you go in and I don't want to like ruin your, I'm not going to ruin your joke by telling them, but like then you hit them with like, a degenerate like style story or kind of thing, like, or a one liner that kind of like misleads the audience. But has that always been how it was, or were you setting it up the viola a lot differently back when you first started doing it to where it is today?
The very first time I did it was at an open mic, and I
Hmm.
framed it as, okay, I play viola and I do comedy. I need to quit one. I can't do both. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna play viola and then do stand up, and you'll tell me which one to quit.
Hmm. Okay.
So it was like the similar spirit in terms of like, let's experiment this, recognizing the weirdness of putting them together.
Hmm.
And then that turned into just, yeah, people would ask me. And so like, let's see how it goes together and then putting them together.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but
it does.
it's always been set up as like,
Yeah.
here are these two things. Let's see how they go together.
Okay. Okay. Um, I'm trying to like from what the little I know about the New York open mic scene, I'm trying to figure out how you were going up there with a viola because it seems like you were 3 minutes and you're trying to like, all right, I gotta explain real quick why I'm bringing this up here, and then I'm from Juilliard, and that like, how did that play out? Like, did like was it planned? Did you practice like how you were gonna deliver? Like, I'm just gonna fuck around up here and see how this goes.
Yeah, I did it at a place where you got 3 minutes. I just like
Okay.
ran up there with the viola in the case, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, and then I like quickly unpacked it and just like did it, and it didn't take more than 3 minutes, but yeah, it was weird, and I didn't do it. Once I did it, I was like, okay, I know that works. I don't really need to like practice that as much as I need to like practice saying my jokes. So it wasn't like
Mhm.
I was taking it to every open mic or anything. I just sort of was like, okay, I know this works.
Yeah.
Now I can just like, as long as I just pick what pieces I'm going to play and what jokes and be strategic in that way, I know that it will carry.
Cool. Cool. I want to talk about your series real quick, is a violist and how it goes into on a string. But it's like Isabel, you are an artist. It's like no matter what medium that we can throw at you, it's like you've been able to make art out of it, whether it's music, stand up, and then like even the directing and the filming and the writing and the just the visual kind of mode and the theme of is a violist. It's very cool. Like it's I don't want to do this to you, but I'm sure you probably like people say like, hey, it gives like Louis vibes. It's like the female kind of Louis kind of like style thing where it's like awkward. It's like embracing that awkward kind of those awkward moments and making them like hilarious. Tell me how you learned to film and write and do all that. You don't have any experience in that.
Yeah, it was a mix of just learning as I went, and that whole series, there's 5 episodes in it, but they
Hmm.
were filmed over the course of like, well, 4 of them were filmed over the course of a couple of years, and then the fifth one I did over COVID because it was like outside.
Okay.
Um, and so it was like it was just really pieced together. Anytime I had an idea, I would write a little episode, and I like finally got like script writing software and was just sort of like looking at other scripts at like how they were formatted and like
Hmm.
YouTubing like script formatting. Like I really like just learned by looking stuff up and
Okay.
emulating, and then besides that, I just had really good people help me film it.
Yeah.
Like the person, my DP, Zach, who filmed 4 of the 5 episodes. Like he's very experienced and like a real artist and like knows what he's doing. So I have to give him a lot of credit.
Hmm.
I had really good comedians involved. So and I had really good editors
Yeah. Okay.
who
So
got, so
how
it's a team effort.
how long did it take you just to write the scripts for these?
What with those episodes, they really came like quickly. I
Okay.
mean, there's really short. Once I had the idea and I could like see each scene in my head,
Hmm.
because I also was like, okay, well, what can I film with zero budget?
Hmm.
And what locations do I actually have access to? So it was like I was writing these ideas both based on like what I knew I could film and what I wanted. So it was like mixture. And so because of that, there was really like in my mind, like only one way it could go each time. There
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of like decision making. It was just sort of like, okay, I got this idea. Okay, that's how I could shoot it. That's what would happen. And I would write it like in a couple days.
Oh wow, okay. Because the from what I understand, like the scenes that were filmed are all things that may have happened to you or things you were like the scene where you're with the other women getting ready for the gig. You're like you said like that didn't happen to me, but I know many people that this happened to, and so you wrote a scene about it. The thing with like the couple getting engaged or all these things act like are you writing these from either personal experiences or stories you've heard? Like from other people. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mix. And but a lot of it is like, I take a kernel of some truth and then spin
Hmm.
it into my own fantasy.
Okay.
Like the 4 women I've played for events companies that make
Hmm.
everyone wear dresses like that, and where the person running the gigs is like kind of a sleaze bag, and we're all in this room together and like we all look the same, and I would just think, what if we all found out we were like harassed by the same guy? Like,
Yeah.
and how would that unfold? And
Yeah.
that was mixed in with like another time where I was like, just you're in like essentially a closet, like
Yeah.
waiting to go play. Like they're putting you in, you're in some hotel and they're like, here, hang out in the coat check room before we're ready for you. So just this mix of like being thrown into some like dingy, weird
Yeah.
space, plus like navigating like harassment. And it all just sort of
Yeah.
came together in that. And I was like, what if we're in like a white room and it's almost like a waiting for Godot? Like, what is
Yeah.
happening? Like, what are we
It's
even
very, yeah.
playing for? We don't even know. I mean, I don't know if it all of that came across, but that was sort of
Oh
the
no, it
ideas
did.
that were coming
Because
that
when I was going to host for you at Wisecrackers, I was like, I was like, I'll be honest, I didn't know who you were, and I was like, let me just check out some of the stuff she's done, and I like saw it. I was like, kind of bummed that it was only 5 episodes. I was like, I wish this was
ah
more, um, which makes me really excited for Honest String, which you said is kind of like you said, I think the way you've written it, it was like the web series is kind of like the precursor to this. Like it's not an extension of it, it's like a sequel or anything, but it's like a lot of the themes and the elements that were in the web series, or we're going to be doing something similar in that aspect to that. How big are your is like the film crew and the editing? How many people are involved in this movie at this point, Isabel? Like between actors and is I don't know anything about movies, so like I know like people run like the freaking food table and that kind of shit. Like, are there like is this similar to that, or how many people are actually like involved in this process?
I mean, there's a lot of people involved. That being said, for a feature film, I'd say there are not that many people involved.
Okay.
I'm at least in terms of, look, there's going to be a lot of actors because that's what the script calls for. There's like a
Hmm.
pretty big cast. There are a ton of bit roles,
Hmm.
which is honestly like really inconvenient for a low budget. It's just like a lot of moving parts isn't great, but that's just how it had to be. In terms of crew and like
Hmm.
producer, and I mean, I'm writing and directing it, and I'm one of the producers, so it's like
Hmm.
that in itself keeps it down. I have like we have a production designer, we have a DP, we have a couple of producers, like,
Yeah.
but we're all like a very like close knit team, and except for a few scenes
Are you
that,
the
yeah.
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, except for a few scenes that like are going to require more help. Like we want to keep it very like contained, and I mean mostly
Okay.
for logistical reasons and budget. We have a really low budget, so
Okay.
um,
Are are you doing, I guess, like, why a movie? What was the thought behind not continuing the web series, doing a full length movie? Is there something you want to get across? Is it like, is this going to be your story? Is this going to be like, hey, this is pretty realistic to what Isabel's life has been like? Or is it going to be more like the web series, which is like, hey, these are just like things that have happened in my in my hemisphere, and what I can do to kind of show it.
there are moments in the movie that are based on experiences I had, like especially like big gigs that happen, but it's
Hmm.
not. It's really not like autobiographical in like the story sense. It
Hmm.
is like the character is definitely inspired by me in the sense that like the emotion of it and like my apathy of it, towards certain things I've done. But um, I hope it's just sort of it's really just a story about like navigating being an artist and what is actually important and what am I actually doing. And but it's very much just like a made up like I
Okay.
I really like just took a few kernels of
Hmm.
experiences and truths and then wove it into this story that I just felt was compelling and got certain emotions across that I wanted to get
Okay.
across. And why a movie? Well, I think if I had just kept making the web series, I would have just kept making it. And
Hmm.
not that many people have seen it. And I think with a feature film, first of all, you can just do more.
Hmm.
I'm gonna have a lot, there's more you can do in a feature film, and you can squeeze the story and make more things happen. And um, also you can just there are more avenues to get it out into the world, whether that's festivals or whatever. It
Okay.
just felt like sort of a good next step. And I really love films. I'm kind of
Hmm.
like sick of episodic television, and
Okay.
I think there's so many good shows out there. And there was a point where I was like, maybe I'll just pitch it as like a TV show, and
Yeah.
tried to do that a little, and nothing was happening. I could have kept going, but then I was like, well, what if I made it myself? And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna make a TV show myself. And I was like, what if I just made a movie? Because I love movies, and
Yeah.
honestly, I think something that has an end and it's just done also is more in line with like what I want to do as an artist, because then I can like do something else
Okay.
rather than how am I going to extend this to the next season? What do I need?
Yeah, I
I
get it.
think I just love movies and that they're just over and then you make
Yeah.
something else.
I mean, so so in the web series, Isabel is just a musician throughout the series. Is first of all, is the character going to be Isabel again, or is it does Isabel, that's the main character of a different name?
TBD. I
TBD. Okay.
am working on that in terms of how much, yeah, I just
Okay.
don't know yet. Right
Okay.
now it's Isabel in the script because it was easier to write
Yeah.
if I was just thinking of it like that.
So is Isabel going to be a comic at all in the movie?
Not at
No,
all.
not at all. Okay. So straight musician still. Straight one.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Um, I wanna start winding down here, but I'm very excited about this movie. You said, I'm sorry, are you starting to film in September or is it coming out in September?
Oh no, I'm starting to film in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you make a movie like this, do you have like, I'm sure like you have like, oh, first of all, do you have writers or are you the only writer? Do you have like a writer's table that people come
No,
in
it's
and
just me.
just you?
Yeah.
Interesting. Why why not involve a counterbalance to something? Is it, do you think that what you're going to write is diluted? Is it just, or is it like, hey, I want to make sure that I get all the credit for how funny this is going to be? Why not include at least another writer in this process? Just curious. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just wondering why.
I feel like with movies, a lot of times it'll just be one writer. I feel like
Oh,
that's
it is? Oh,
pretty
no clue how that works.
common. I
Okay.
know for TV it's less common.
Okay.
Usually you have a writer's room and all of that. With a film, it's like
The
I don't know
screenplay, I guess.
why,
Okay.
but I feel like you oftentimes in the credits it's just written by so and so. And I would definitely want to collaborate in the future. I think for this story, it was just like it was a more like it felt just more efficient to just write it myself,
Okay.
and no one was going to be able to. This particular story is so specific and subtle and contained, and
Mhm.
bringing someone else into it would have just I wouldn't have wanted to make
Diluted.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did are the principal characters other than yourself, who's the main star, the principal characters are these trained actors or are these comics or a
It's a
mix?
mix. They're also one principal character will mostly be like just a musician. Like I
Okay.
really want the players to be able to actually play their instruments. So it's
Okay.
going to be a fun mix of people with all different backgrounds. I wrote specific characters with that in mind. Like, okay, this might be cast. This person might be a musician and not an actor who we cast. So let me make sure they don't have to like cry on command or do
Yeah.
something wild. Like I kind of
Yeah.
wrote it with like keeping everyone's potential ability in mind.
Okay. So
Yeah,
so the people that are playing the characters in your movie, are they, so you wrote the parts for specific people, knowing their
not for
personalities?
specific people, but for specific types of people.
Okay. How comfortable are you, since you're working with a lot of creative people who are, so they're not just actors who can just recite lines really well, but you're working with musicians and comics who think for themselves and that kind of stuff. How are you going to be when they are you going to shut down any kind of notes like, hey, I have a note for you here, or like maybe like something, but you're like, no, this is my vision kind of thing. How's that going to work out?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't. I mean, I think it'll just, especially with a low budget film like this, time is going to be of the essence. So I don't know how much time we'll have to like goof around and experiment. It
You
might,
you say low
yeah.
budget. I don't want that to come across for the 40 people that watch these episodes as a, like some kind of like weird third rate horror movie kind of thing with that. Like I've seen your web series. It is very well done. And
Thank
that is
you.
even more low budget than this movie. That I think I think we can expect really good quality coming out of this. I
Thank you.
No, no problem. I just wanted to kind of like understand um like when you make a movie for someone who's not worked in this kind of field before and you're taking on so many responsibilities, like did you have a mentor or a coach? Are you working with lawyers to protect yourself kind of thing, and contracts and that kind of shit? Like how does that work? Because like this seems like a pretty big deal. Like I know I know you're heading a lot of the creative aspects, but it seems like you're also like contracting out a lot of like the what's the like the right word, like the operational things, like are there things that you've had to rely on other people to help make sure like this goes off without people couldn't just not show up? You're gonna need contracts with these people. You know what I mean? Like just not show up on the
Oh
day of
yeah.
film kind of thing.
No, we're doing everything,
Okay.
legally by the
Okay.
book. There's a lawyer, there's definitely all of that happening.
But someone guiding
Um,
you through the process, like Isabel, I know you've never done this before. Let me like guide you through kind of person.
Not one person, but my producers are more experienced than
Hmm.
I am, far more experienced. So they can kind of point me in, okay, we'll need one of these and we'll need this. Oh, and you're going to need this. And I'm like, great. I had no idea. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm good at surrounding myself with very smart people who
Okay.
can guide me in all the ways that are not, just the writing the thing. And
Okay.
then I've also sent the script to a lot of people for feedback. It's not like I'm
Hmm.
like, this is great and I don't need anyone's opinion. No one
Yeah.
helped me write it, but I definitely like got notes from people who are more experienced in that kind of thing. So
Okay. Cool. So it, this movie, which I'm excited, like how are you going? Like I know you said you're going to shop at festivals. Awesome. What other kind of platforms is it going to go out against? Or is it just like, no, this is a festival movie? Or could someone like with your opposition to wide, like broad YouTube kind of things, like how are you going to distribute this movie when it's done? Could someone like myself watch it, or do I have to come to like the New York Film Festival to see this thing?
I mean, I hope you'll have to come somewhere to see. Like,
I
I have
don't
no
leave my house,
idea.
Isabel, so it's
It'll
gonna be hard.
it'll definitely eventually be. I mean, people will be able to see it if they want to see it.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of how many people know that it's out there to see.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's a lot of people, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
just so
sure.
unpredictable. But
If
hopefully gonna take it to the moon. I'm gonna do whatever I can to get it out there. But
How important is it that this wins an award? What would you rather have? It wins an award, Isabel, or just like so many people have seen it and really enjoy it and never wins an award?
I mean, awards don't necessarily, it would be great, but I feel like there's also a world where it doesn't win any awards, but also people
Okay.
love it and it
Okay.
gets seen a lot. It gets distribution, but it doesn't win any awards, but people are going to see it.
Okay.
That'd probably be just as important.
I know. It just seems you're very on top of the fest. Like it needs to be at a festival. I'm like, well, just put
Oh,
out content, Isabel. I feel like put out
well,
content.
I mean, so many resources are going into this, so I can't
Yeah.
just like put it out there for free. I mean,
No,
I
no,
have
not
to
for
at least
free. Not for
try.
free. Not for
Yeah, yeah.
free. But like it's cool. How important to you at this point, Isabel, would it be to play the New York Philharmonic, or is that no longer a goal for you? You don't care.
They just held Viola auditions and I did not take them.
Is it the first
So,
time? First year not doing it?
oh, I never took
Oh,
them.
you never took them. Oh, okay. I thought it sounded like this was the first time you've gone down this road. Okay.
No, but yeah.
Um, what is your ultimate goal in comedy? If there was something where if you had like one thing you want to do before you either retired or whatever you want to say about ending your career in stand up, what would be the one thing you would want to make sure is something that you do?
It's tough to say because what I really want to do is sustain a performance career,
Okay.
but something that would help that would be like, a special on like a streaming platform that a lot of
Hmm.
people see.
Hmm.
So I guess
See
it's
so?
weird to say like, a Netflix special would be like the last thing I want to do because I only really want that so that I can keep doing it.
Yeah, I get it.
So maybe if it was like the last thing
Hmm.
would be to like sell out Madison Square Garden, since that would be like a fun moment,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
be a rush.
Okay. Um, and my last question for you, Isabel, and thank you again for your time today. I know
Of
it's been a
course.
long time, is you've been very open about performance anxiety that you have, which I couldn't tell if that was just from the music career, stand up, or both. Um, can you kind of describe it, so with anxiety, like, do you medicate or do you go like, hey, part of the way that I have been able to sustain success, part of that has been that I need to be anxious before I get on stage because I am a much better professional with doing so. What would you say about that part?
It's super complex because with music, like I do think the adrenaline that I am calling anxiety, whether it's adrenaline from excitement or nerves, it's always a different thing. I just get a very high level of adrenaline before I perform,
Hmm.
almost always. It really hurts me as a violist because it just manifests itself physically and then it messes up my playing.
Hmm.
So, I want that energy, but I need it to be like toned down a little so I can
Hmm.
still like do everything I need to do physically, which is so precise. Whereas with comedy, like it's almost like the more nervous, the better, because I love like kind of shaking on stage and being so like electric. I feel like that
Hmm.
really adds to my performance.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like the same nerves, but they just serve me differently with whatever I'm doing.
Hmm.
Uh, I, a lot of musicians will take beta blockers so that they don't shake. I've taken beta blockers. I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to say it. Like
Yeah.
it's a very like common thing
Yeah.
for especially like high level classical
Hmm.
musicians to do.
Hmm.
Um, you don't really need them for comedy, like because I said I kind of like the shaking.
The energy. Yeah. Which I don't
Yeah.
pick up on when I've seen you perform. I don't pick up on the nerves when you perform. It's you come out very stoic and stoic, and I would say like kind of like you want to earn your place on that stage. You're like, okay, I'm gonna earn it. I'm not gonna just like, you see some people, and I'm not gonna like throw comics names out, but they're like come out very boisterous and they're like larger than life personalities where you're more like unassuming kind of thing. So I don't get that. I don't get like the nerves. I mean, it's not visually evident, I would say, Isabel.
I think if you looked at my hands, you'd see a little shaking.
Yeah.
Also, you've seen me perform, in places where maybe I was a little less nervous
Yeah. Okay.
because of where we,
Like,
you know,
true.
I
True.
I'm like, okay, I have a task at hand and it's taming this wild table of drunk
Yeah.
guys. Like I don't have like the energy to be nervous. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, like if you watch my first Fallon appearance,
Hmm.
I think I come across pretty nervous.
Okay.
People have even commented like she seems nervous, and I'm like,
Well,
I
yeah, no
was,
duh, because it's your
but
first time. Yeah, you want to make the
yeah.
impression. I lied to you. I had this one thing written here I was curious about. So, no idea about Juilliard. I mean, obviously by brand name only, but seen the movie Whiplash, and I feel like that is a fictional kind of Juilliard like school. How true was the movie Whiplash to being like either experience that you witnessed firsthand or stories that you've been told from being at Juilliard that seemed horrific?
I went to see that movie
Yeah.
with my boyfriend at the time, who was a drummer,
Hmm.
and we both walked out with very different reactions. And he went to a competitive school too, and I
Oh, he
said
has a
that was
drummer.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a drummer.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, that was nothing like my experience. Like it was
Hmm.
so over dramatized, like
Hmm.
laughing at it
Hmm.
basically. And he was like, no, that was like that reminded me of like some experiences. So it wasn't like my experience, but
Okay.
I do know some people relate to it. I think it just kind of depends what teachers you had at school.
Hmm. Okay.
Different teachers are hard. I think I got lucky. I had really nice teachers for the most part. I did have one who made me cry. She was a very mean old woman. But she even wasn't like as abusive as
Yeah.
that
Well, I
professor.
took away from that movie not so much like the abuse, I think, is what everyone remembers, like him just like physically beating up Miles Teller. But like the thing that like got to me was like just being like the guy who Miles Teller eventually replaces, just being like, you're done, sit out. Like, and like this person whose livelihood, hung in the balance of this guy's thing. Like, did you have experiences where they were like, no, you're replaceable, go, and someone else would sit there?
There just wasn't that kind of structure.
Okay.
When we had an orchestra and it was all like rotational, and
Hmm.
sometimes some people would be principal and some people wouldn't, but it was never any indication of like future success. It was just sort
Hmm.
of like getting to gloat in that moment, like I'm the principal. And
Okay.
so it just I couldn't relate to that kind. There was no like cut and dry, like you're out, you're it, like at
Yeah.
least not in the viola or orchestral department. Just there weren't opportunities for that. Um, but I think maybe in like a jazz band situation, there is maybe more of that kind of hierarchy. I don't
Okay.
know.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
yeah, I mean the thing that got me was when he like gets hit by a car or something on the way to the
Oh, yeah.
gig. and he's
Yeah.
like eating, and he still wants to make it to the gig. And that,
Yeah.
for me, that was like a little too far. I know it's like it's a movie, and it's supposed to
Yeah.
sort of like heighten this like ego that
Hmm.
is so much a part of it. And him, the conversation where he's like, well, I want to be remembered when I die. Like he's around the
Hmm.
table, and he is like this insane character in that
Yeah.
way. And I appreciate that, like from a filmmaking standpoint. As a musician, I could not relate to it. I'm just like, if I were hit by a car, like I would go to the hospital. I don't know. I just like, so.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time spending with this interview. It was really good. I really had fun talking to you and listening to you and getting some good insight. I'm asking, I'm going to put in the show notes, but I'm asking everybody to follow Isabel at Isabel Hagen on all the social media platforms and isabelhagen.com, which you can click on in the show notes. Can people still donate to On a String, or is it? I know you guys have reached your goal, but like, still, would money still help coming through your way, or is it done? Done.
No, we still need some money.
Okay.
If you follow me, it's actually at Isabel Hagen _ on Instagram. Isabel
Okay.
Hagen frustratingly is taken. But if you go there, or you go to my website, there's a link to make a tax deductible donation
Oh, okay.
still. So if anyone wants to give, or we are taking on investments. So if
Okay.
anyone wants to invest in a film,
Okay.
write to me on my website.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Cool. And I'll put the link for the fundraising page for On a String on there as well. But thank you so
Okay.
much, Isabel. I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Mark.
talking to you. Hope to see you in person sometime soon, maybe, hopefully.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yes. All right. Take care. Best of luck
Okay.
to you. I'll see you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.